In Travis Drive, Wisconsin, Ivonne Scruggs was content and at ease with her husband and 2-year-old son. The family appeared to be stronger than ever, and everything was going well. Their joy was short-lived though, as Ivonne discovered that her husband, 29-year-old Benny Scruggs, had been fatally stabbed early on July 17, 1985. During their investigation, the police found a lot of secrets. They were, however, unaware that it would take more than 35 years to solve the case. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Detective, in which we narrate the stories of some of the most notorious cold cases in recorded history. Today, we will be examining the 1985 stabbing death of Benny Scruggs. Please take a moment to click the bell icon, like, and subscribe to the channel before we begin so that you can be the first to learn about any new cold cases. Having said that, let's explore this horrible cold case together. The county seat of Wisconsin's Wood County in the United States is the city of Wisconsin Rapids. Here, neighbors greet one another with sincere smiles and offer assistance when needed, creating a harmonious blend of small-town charm and contemporary conveniences. It's a patchwork of varied communities where ties of friendship and tradition are deeply valued. Living in Wisconsin Rapids offers a rewarding and enriching experience, whether it's supporting the local sports team, taking part in community festivals, or just taking in the peace of the surrounding natural wonders. It also provides a safe atmosphere with 1.71 violent crimes per 1,000 residents. Nonetheless, no city in the world is completely impervious to evil. Following the brutal murder of Benny Scruggs in Wisconsin Rapids, the city was the focus of one of the longest-running cold cases in its history. On August 18, 1956, Benny Eugene Scruggs was born in Pickens, South Carolina. He was raised alongside his older sister, Ansel, older brother, Wayne, and younger sister, Kim. He was the third child born into the family of Garvin and Rudy Scruggs, but little is known about his early years. At the age of 25, Benny wed Ivonne Cuba in Easley, South Carolina, on May 15, 1982. A year into their happy marriage, in 1983, Ivonne gave birth to a son she named Matthew. On July 16, 1985, Benny and Ivonne went to Lance's, a nearby restaurant, for dinner and drinks. They asked their babysitter to look after their 2-year-old son Matthew while they were away. The child was cared for by the babysitter until they returned home at 1 in the morning. According to the babysitter, the couple was really happy when they got home that early morning. The couple said their goodbyes to the babysitter and went to bed. It was still unclear exactly what happened next. Nevertheless, the culmination of each scenario is the same. Benny Scruggs passed away on July 17, 1985, sometime around 3 in the morning. A man named Brian Walker called the police and told them about Benny. He asked the police to be at the Scruggs home right away. When they asked for more details about the situation as they were en route, Brian informed the police that he was Benny's neighbor and that Benny's wife, Ivonne, had called him for help. On arrival at the Scruggs home, he saw that Benny had been stabbed. Brian went on to say that Benny was bleeding heavily and barely breathing. He was advised by the officers to keep applying pressure to the area in order to stop the bleeding. In response, he said that he was carrying a knife in case the murderer returned. The police first calmed him down and advised him to put the knife down and instead apply pressure to the wound, because they were aware of the circumstances and knew how worried he would be. Over the phone, officers could hear Brian calling Ivonne to come press on Benny's bleeding area. Additionally, they heard Ivonne mention that one of her butcher knives had vanished. Benny's mobile home, located in the Pioneer Village Mobile Home Park at 1310 29th Avenue South in Travis Drive, was quickly approached by Wisconsin police. With a towel covering his stab wounds, Benny lay bleeding on the waterbed in his trailer home. The coroner pronounced Benny dead when the ambulance finally pulled up to the scene. A single knife wound to the upper left side of the chest was found to be the cause of death after the police sent his body for an autopsy. According to Dr. Robert Huntington, the medical examiner, the murder weapon was an extremely large knife. He suggested to the investigators that a big butcher's knife might have been the weapon. Huntington claimed that because Benny had no wounds on his hands or arms for defense, he was stabbed while he was sleeping. The blade had cut through his lung to the last layer of flesh on his back, between two vertebrae. He added that there would have been a hole in the waterbed if the knife had been even a quarter of an inch longer. After talking with Ivonne, the detective found that the knife that had vanished from their kitchen fit the murder weapon description pretty well. This prompted a thorough hunt for the murder weapon. In the vicinity of Pioneer Village, the mobile home park where Benny lived, police emptied a pond in an attempt to find the knife, but they were unable to find any. On July 22, 1985, volunteer divers from the Central Wisconsin Diving Academy also assisted law enforcement in their unsuccessful search for the knife. The next week, Benny was buried in Wisconsin Rapids at the Restlawn Memorial Park. Benny's wife, Ivonne, who was 21 at the time, said during the first interrogation that she had gone to another room to comfort her child after hearing him scream. She continued by saying that she had dozed off in her son's room. When she woke up, she went back to Benny's bedroom, and it was then that she discovered Benny had been stabbed during her absence. She made other statements as well, though. When Ivonne was asked to come in for a follow-up interview following the first one, she said something a little different. After the babysitter left, she claimed to the detectives that Benny had fallen asleep, but she had not. She eventually heard her son, who is 2 years old, crying. She went to check on the toddler and spent 10 minutes in his room because she was already awake. Returning to the bedroom where Benny slept, she discovered the caravan door was open and an odd shovel leaning against the refrigerator, which gave her the impression that something was wrong. Since the Scruggs family lacked a shovel, Ivonne hurried to see how Benny was doing. Her spouse was lying in a puddle of blood. After seeing the horrifying scene, she called her neighbor Brian for help. Following the second interview, Ivonne was heard by the investigators telling her friends, "I was sleeping next to him. Someone stabbed him. I'm not sure." In their last interview of the evening, Ivonne revealed that she and Benny had fallen asleep together. When she woke up, she discovered that he had puked and that their son had come crying into their room. Throughout the interviews, Yvonne's statement kept changing. With all of these contradicting remarks, the detectives' work became needlessly complicated. They were made to feel as though Yvonne had no desire to assist them in solving the case. They consequently started concentrating on other comments made by their neighbor, Donald Meyer. While few people had any information that could have helped with the investigation, Donald Meyer's testimony was deemed crucial by the authorities. Meyer lived close to Benny and Yvonne's house with a woman named Beverly Polanski and her 10-year-old son. Donald Meyer, a significant character in this compelling story, confided in one of the witnesses on August 10, 1985, revealing fascinating connections to the victim, Benny Scruggs, despite claiming to have only known Benny for a short time. He claimed that their friendship began with the sale of a motorcycle and the purchase of a car. However, there was a surprising turn of events when Benny revealed that he had known his wife, Ivonne Scruggs, since high school. It's interesting that they ended up together again. 4 or 5 years prior, Mia and Ivonne had worked together at the Wilco store. Mia stated that although Ivonne felt he had mistreated her while they were in school, she was adamant about getting him back. In short order, their professional relationship quickly became personal and involved romance. Ivonne used to give Mia rides home, stopping frequently for private conversations on a remote dirt road. He went on to say that Ivonne was prone to losing her temper and that he wouldn't be shocked if she was the one who killed Benny. It is said that Ivonne confided in Maya before Benny was killed, airing her grievances regarding her husband. Ivonne and Benny's once ferocious passion had soured. Maya took her claim that she had lost the fizz to mean that she no longer felt the same way she did about Benny. The days before Benny's terrible death saw an increase in tension. Benny confronted Maya 3 days prior to his death, revealing Ivonne's constant reference to Maya, which infuriated Benny. It seemed to both men like a calculated attempt to provoke and arouse his jealousy. Maya said he had not seen Ivonne since February 1985, adding that Ivonne had invited him over while Benny was away the last time they had seen each other. They made good use of their private time and enjoyed themselves in the living room. Donald Maya added that Ivonne told him just before he left that he already knew how to get rid of Benny if he ever wanted to be with her. Maya's comments significantly altered the direction of the case. When Ivonne was interviewed in August 1985, the police confronted her about Maya's remarks. Maya's account was confirmed by Ivonne, who said she was embarrassed and didn't tell the police about her relationship with Maya because she didn't think it was relevant to the investigation. She refuted ever making any suggestion to get rid of Benny though. Before long, Ivonne became the focus of suspicion, and the investigators dug deep to find any evidence that would allay their worries. On August 20, 1987, Yvonne's high school friend, Cynthia Rias, was visited by detectives Bruce Mallorik and Exner. She said that in May 1985, she and Ivonne were at a social service event held at the Wood County Courthouse. Ivonne approached Cynthia as soon as Benny and she entered the room, lowered her face to her ear, and made crude remarks about Benny before revealing that he had found out about her lover. She added that since she and Benny wouldn't be together for very long, it wasn't something that worried her too much. Following this mysterious statement, Ivonne vanished and got in touch with Cynthia about 2 months after Benny passed away. She asked if she had heard about the murder of Benny, to which Cynthia replied that she had. Ivonne revealed to her that everyone believed that she had killed Benny, her husband. Cynthia questioned Ivonne about it, asking if she really did. Ivonne, however, didn't respond. Another witness who was acquainted with the Scruggs said Ivonne had once told her that she knew who had killed Benny. When the witness questioned her about why she didn't report the incident to the police, she reiterated that she knew who was at fault, but was unable to report him to the police. Following that statement, Yvonne's credibility was called into question, and the police began to suspect that she had some sort of involvement in the crime. The investigators were on edge due to Yvonne's provocative remarks. They carried on for several years. Nevertheless, the case stagnated due to a lack of evidence until Maya's fresh testimony in 2012. Maya piled up a lengthy list of criminal charges as the case was coming to an end, while Yvonne remarried to a man named Kevin Newkirchen. Mia faced 2 counts of threatening a Wood County judge in 2005. A jury found him guilty of the charges in 2006. He was accused of stalking on 10 different occasions. Years were going by, and the police still had no answers, despite reaching out to the jury members who had found Maya guilty on 2 counts and another jury that found him guilty on 6. However, as Donald Maya awaited his stalking trial in the Wisconsin prison system and Wood County Jail, the case was about to take a turn. In 2012, he made contact with the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department, expressing his desire to talk about the murder of Benny Scruggs. Maya was instrumental in cracking the case, even though he acknowledged to the police that he did not commit the crime. He told the police during the interview that Yvonne was trying to set him up for Benny's death. Additionally, he said that he had visited the Scruggs residence multiple times, which would make it easier for her to carry out her plan since his fingerprints were found everywhere. In addition, he drew a detailed sketch of the caravan and included details about its occupants that had not before been disclosed, like the fact that the back door was bolted shut and the bedroom door did not lock. When a witness came forward in 2013, after reading about Benny's murder in the newspaper, suspicions regarding Yvonne increased even further. She stated in the interview that while Ivonne was still married to her new husband, her son dated her between 1989 and 1990. She continued by saying that Ivonne responded that she loved them both when she asked her about dating her son while she was married to someone else. In response to the witness's warning that she couldn't have it both ways, Ivonne retorted that she had already killed one spouse and could do it again if needed. During the interview, the witness's son, who dated Ivonne, was also present. He said he had asked her about her child's father and about what had happened to him when they were courting. According to Ivonne, he had died because she had killed him, but she did add that she couldn't remember much of it because she was intoxicated. Investigators spoke with a few of Maillet's prisoners in 2013. They said that when Ivonne was married to Benny, Maillet used to enjoy talking about his continuous physical relationship with her. The prisoners claim that during Maillet's incarceration, he spoke with other prisoners about the Benny Scruggs case. One prisoner claimed that on the evening of the July 17, 1985 murder, Maillet stood outside in Caravan Park and watched Benny and Ivonne Scruggs head back home. Maillet informed the prisoner that he was aware that Benny would be alone in the bedroom since Ivonne Scruggs would be in her son's room at the mobile home. In a separate interview, a prisoner told police that Donald Maillet had told him what had transpired the day Benny Scruggs was killed. Maillet allegedly entered the bedroom of the mobile home, stabbed Benny Scruggs, and left. After that, he went home, undressed, showered, and threw away the murder weapon along with his clothes. Maillet said he knew the trash would be picked up first thing in the morning, so that's why he decided to kill that day. He also said that while the police were still looking for the murder weapon, the trash collectors picked up the trash with the knife in it. On November 13, 2015, Ivonne died in Eagle River, Wisconsin, from severe alcohol poisoning. Ivonne was the subject of Benny's investigations, and although the investigators harbored misgivings about her, she was never charged with or tried for murder. Maillet informed a witness that Ivonne was dead and that the police would never find the knife after learning of her passing. Maillet had once said that the night before he killed Benny, he had a sexual relationship with her. This information was provided by another prisoner. In an interview conducted later in 2017, one of Maillet's fellow prisoners claimed that he had admitted to killing Benny. He said that Yvonne's refusal to be with Maillet while her husband was alive was the reason Maillet killed Benny. He mentioned in the course of the interview that he also heard Maillet talking to his mother on the phone. He was expressing his relief in that phone call that Yvonne and Benny were both dead. Eventually, the investigators found the phone call tape which supported the witnesses' accounts. After 37 years, the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department received assistance from the Wisconsin Department of Justice's Division of Criminal Investigation, and in 2022, 60-year-old Donald Maillet was charged with Benny Scruggs' murder. Robert Kaiser, the Assistant Attorney General of Wisconsin, was serving as the case's special prosecutor. On September 9, 2022, Maillet, who was incarcerated at the Racine Correctional Institute in Sturtevant, was supposed to appear in court on the murder charge. He declined to cooperate with his public defender and would not leave his cell for the hearing. Maillet's public attorney attempted to get a new date for a public hearing in December 2022, but the judge was not willing to budge. Donald Maillet was granted a retrial and entered a not guilty plea. His next trial, which was conducted virtually via video conference, was set for April 2023. There was no definitive verdict at the end of the trial. Donald Maillet showed up in court on May 2, 2023, following Judge Todd Wolf's order for the competency evaluation. Following a slew of accusations from the defendant, Maillet expressed a wish to end the retainer agreement with his lawyer and either take up the case alone or represent himself. Timothy Hogan, Maillet's lawyer, asserted he was not aware of Maillet's desire to be relieved of his responsibilities. Judge Wolf then mandated a hearing to determine competency before moving forward with the lawsuit. There was still no clear resolution to the case, and no new court proceedings were planned right away. Even though Donald Meyer's fate was not decided at the hearings, it seemed very clear that he would serve some time in prison. Mia's future remained uncertain. Given how convoluted Benny Scruggs' case was, it appeared that any of them could have been the murderer from a distance. However, we'll have to wait and see how the legal process develops. We won't have all the answers until then. Do you believe Donald Meyer was actually to blame for Benny's demise, or did Ivonne have some hand in it? Post your ideas in the comments below.
Just over 56 years ago today, on Thursday, May 26, 1966, Betty Lou Zukowski left her family's home on Front Street in Chicopee around 6 p.m. after receiving a phone call that she told her mother was from one of her girlfriends. That was in fact the last time that they saw her.
On May 30, 1966, a father and his son were fishing on the bank of the Westfield River in West Springfield, and they discovered something larger than a usual fish floating just below the surface of the water. Out of curiosity, they tried casting their fishing net just to be sure it was not a fish. Shockingly to them, a dead body surfaced. That body was 10-year-old Betty Lou Zukowski, who had gone missing for a few days. The fishermen quickly informed the police, who rushed down to the crime scene to investigate the matter. At the time, Mildred and Stanley Zukowski had filed a missing person report of their daughter with the Chicopee Police Department. The police then informed them to come identify if the found body was their lost daughter. The worst fear of a parent is having to bury their own child. Mildred and Stanley prayed for Betty Lou's safety and hoped that she wouldn't be the one found dead in the river. Unfortunately, it seemed luck was far from them, because, on getting to the crime scene, they discovered that the dead body was indeed their daughter, Betty Lou Zukowski. On Thursday, May 26, 1966, approximately 57 years ago, 10-year-old Catholic schoolgirl, Betty Lou Zukowski left her family's house on 293 Front Street in Chicopee, Massachusetts around 6 p.m., right after getting a phone call from someone whom she told her mother was her girlfriend. She was supposed to meet up with this girlfriend and hang out for a cup of ice cream. Her parents, being used to their daughter leaving the house often, gave her the permission to go. They never knew that would be the last time they would see their daughter alive. Betty Lou Zukowski prepared to head out as she dressed in a green checkered blouse, blue pants, a jacket, and white sneakers. She also took along with her $2. Later that evening, when Betty Lou failed to return home, her parents, Stanley and Mildred Zukowski, called the Chicopee Police Department around 11:15 p.m. to report her missing. For some reason, they told the police not to declare her publicly missing for a significant amount of hours. Some sources said they were probably used to her staying away from home for that long. However, the Chicopee Police Department quickly issued an all-states alarm in their attempt to find her. They later learned that the girlfriend Betty Lou talked about was not real. The search for her continued for 3 days without progress, but sadly, 4 days later, on the 30th of May 1966, which appeared to be a Memorial Day, Betty Lou's battered and mud-covered body was found offshore by 2 young men fishing in the Westfield River in West Springfield. According to autopsy results, her cause of death was determined to be multiple blunt force injuries to her head, a skull fracture, and terminal drowning. Betty Lou was still alive when she went into the Westfield River, and she had not been sexually assaulted. The police believed that she was beaten within 15 minutes of her drowning. After discovering Betty Lou's remains, there was a joint homicide investigation led by the West Springfield Police Department and assisted by the Chicopee Police Department. These police departments initially assigned their entire detective bureaus to the case. The Hampton County District Attorney's Office and the Massachusetts State Police were also involved. In order to find clues, there was a thorough search along the shore where Betty Lou's body was found. Also, divers searched the river for any helpful evidence that could pinpoint the perpetrator. Nothing was found, not even the murder weapon. The investigators then interviewed Betty Lou's family, friends, and classmates to determine who she may have met up with at the time of her disappearance and eventual murder. Her Chicopee friends had told police that she liked exploring the caves that were dug into the bank of Chicopee River behind the Chicopee Electric Light Company. Police, however, checked all the places she loved to explore but found nothing that could lead them to her killer. According to police and news reports from the time of her death, Betty Lou was portrayed as a loose girl. Her friends described her as smart, kind, funny, adventurous, energetic and spunky. They said she had dyed her dark brown hair to blonde at the age of 10. She wore makeup, had pierced ears and often wore cross-shaped earrings. According to her close friends, she had been seen at times with teenage boys, hanging out with them mostly in their cars. Some people said Betty Lou was probably in a hurry to grow up at the age of 10, and her free-spirited nature must have made her trust an older person who eventually took advantage of her and murdered her. Betty Lou's friend had told investigators that she had once said she was seeing a boy named Ralph. Back in 1966, according to her friend's description of Ralph, he was a white, 17 or 18 years old male with black hair, brown eyes, medium complexion, and often wore black-framed glasses. He was said to be 5'5" and weighed between 125 and 135 pounds. He drove either a Chevrolet that had a dark blue bottom with either a white or light blue top or a dark green Chevrolet sedan. However, the police discovered that the name Ralph was non-existent. Betty Lou had either lied about Ralph's real name or Ralph had lied to Betty Lou about his name. The police believed that Betty Lou knew the person who killed her, otherwise she would not have left her home after receiving the phone call on Thursday night. Detectives claimed that she met up with this person and ended up in West Springfield after riding in a vehicle operated by someone she knew. However, in the days following the discovery of her body, there was no significant leads. On the 2nd of June 1966, Betty Lou Zukowski was buried on her 11th birthday. Her funeral was held at Holy Name Church in Chicopee and was conducted with high mass honors. Several schoolmates from her 5th grade class at the Valentine School in Chicopee were pallbearers. Those who attended her funeral were made up of her entire class and her teacher. Betty Lou was free-spirited and was deeply loved. A week after Betty Lou remains were found, detectives developed a sketch of the suspect from 2 witnesses. One of these witnesses was the last person to have seen Betty Lou alive few hours before she was killed on May 26, 1966. This sketch, however, was similar to Ralph's description. The sketch was later released to the public and was highly publicized in local newspapers at the time. It brought investigators some tips, but none led to the identity of the killer. Having exhausted all leads, the case went cold for years, but, after the formation of the Hampton District Attorney's Office's Unresolved Cases Unit in 2019, Betty Lou's homicide case was reopened. Officials then got to find out that in November of 1997, a man named Donald Mars was brought up as a suspect when investigators of the West Springfield Police Department received information from multiple sources that linked him to Betty Lou's killing. However, he was never arrested due to lack of sufficient evidence to pin him to the crime. 25 years later, in 2022, Betty Lou's case gained an intense focus, and on Tuesday, November 1 of 2022, Donald Mars was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Betty Lou Zukowski. A warrant for his arrest was issued. Donald Mars was then taken into custody on the 2nd of November 2022. The evidence that linked him to the murder has not been disclosed yet, but, at the press conference, Hampton District Attorney Anthony Gugliuni did mention that significant statements made led to Donald Mars' arrest. Someone must have seen something and confessed, or Donald Mars probably implicated himself during interrogation. Donald Mars came from a well-known family in Chicopee. His father, Roger Mars, owned Mars Heating and Service, and had 5 sons. Roger Mars served in Korea, and at least 2 of his sons were in the military. Donald Mars was probably one of those sons in the military because at the time of his arrest, he was living at a Veterans Administration facility in Bedford. Donald Mars seemed to have quite a number of crimes in his life book. According to the State Sex Offender Registry Board, in 1995, Donald Mars had been convicted of 2 counts of child rape with force and 3 counts of indecent assault and battery on a child under 14. He is classified as a Level 3 sex offender, which means he is considered most likely to re-offend. When he was convicted in May of 1995, he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, and was released in June of 1997 and given probation. He violated the probation and was given a 5 to 7 year sentence at Cedar Junction. After his convictions, Donald Mars was determined to be sexually dangerous and was civilly committed to the Massachusetts Treatment Center in Bridgewater from 1994 to 2015, before finally landing in a Veterans Administration facility, a hospital in Bedford, Massachusetts, where he was living before his arrest. At the time of Betty Lou's murder, Donald was 17 years of age, and the sketch made from the description of Ralph by Betty Lou's friends is similar to the high school yearbook photo of Donald Mars. Also, at the time of murder, Donald Mars was somewhat familiar with the area where Betty Lou's body was found. According to a newspaper archive, his family used to visit his grandparents' house at 102 Woodmont Street in West Springfield. They went to their home for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and other occasions. This address is a 4-minute drive from the murder scene at the end of Dewey Street. Donald Mars, who is now 73 years old, was arraigned to a Hampton Superior Court indictment charging him with first-degree murder for the killing of Betty Lou. In a proceeding conducted via Zoom, when he was asked to enter his plea, Donald Mars pleaded not guilty while sounding as if he wanted to burst into tears.
As this indictment, sir, how do you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Thank you, sir.
His criminal history was described and he was asked to be held without right to bail. This didn't sit well with Donald Mars as he appeared disdainful. The case was adjourned to May 1st of 2023 for pre-trial conference. Sadly, Betty Lou's parents are no more as they died in the 1980s. Mildred Zukowski, who died at the age of 61, was said to have fell off from her room's window. Some source said she committed suicide since she probably could not take the pain of losing Betty Lou Zukowski, her only child. A year later, Stanley Zukowski died at age 64 from an unknown cause. No siblings of the Zukowski family is recorded alive. However, the Hampton District Attorney, Anthony Gugliuni, has this to say after Donald Mars was finally arrested.
Sadly, Betty Lou's parents are deceased and will not see Donald Mars answer for what we allege he did to their daughter. My office, however, has been in contact with Betty Lou's extended family members, one of whom, in fact, was a pallbearer at her funeral in 1966. While this investigation undoubtedly will not bring Betty Lou back to her family or grant her the opportunity to grow into a healthy adult that she and every child deserves, it is for them and for Betty Lou that we embark on this journey of seeking justice.
Many cold cases had been left unsolved for ages without the perpetrators being brought to book. But recently, families of murder victims now have a glimmer of hope as most of these cases are being truly solved, giving them closure and finally finding peace and rest for their deceased loved ones. We hope that all perpetrators of murder and other horrible crimes be apprehended even before they get a chance to go 6 feet under the ground.
This case takes us to North Webster, Indiana. In 1975, the little town of North Webster was known to be quiet, peaceful, and safe. It was a place where residents often kept their doors unlocked. Back then, parents would often give their children the freedom to go ride bikes up and down the traffic-free streets. North Webster was a community where everyone knew each other, and people spent hours hanging out on their front porches. But when Laurel Mitchell was murdered, the news of her death sent shockwaves throughout the small town, and residents were faced with the unsettling possibility that the killer could be someone they knew. The small lake community of North Webster had never before seen a crime like the 1975 murder of Laurel Jean Mitchell. Even today, with the case solved, the community still remembers the case. Laurel Jean Mitchell was born on the 24th of May, 1958 to Richard Dick Mitchell and Wilma Mae Mitchell in Whitley County, Indiana. At the time of Laurel's murder, Dick Mitchell was a well-known public figure in North Webster. He was a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. On the other hand, Laurel's mother, Wilma Mitchell, operated the North Webster Food Pantry at Augsburger's for several years. Apart from Laurel, Dick and Wilmer had two more children named Bruce and Sarah, who were 18 and 12 respectively. Laurel and her siblings had a tight-knit bond despite the occasional siblings' rivalry. Laurel grew up to become a loved personality in North Webster. Her friendly nature and heartwarming smile won over the hearts of everyone she met. She often went out of her way to make other people around her happy and feel loved. Laurel had many talents, in which one of them was her love for singing. This made her join the local church choir. Her love for music did not stop there. She was a good dancer who brushed up her skills by taking dance lessons at a local studio. She found a sense of accomplishment in singing and dancing. By the age of 17, Laurel Mitchell was set to begin her senior year in Wawasee High School. Before the school year began, she decided to take up a job at the Cokesbury Inn, a small restaurant in Epworth Forest, located on the shores of Webster Lake. For her, taking up a job at the restaurant means having the opportunity to gather experience and add value to her life, while she makes a couple of extra bucks. On the 6th of August, 1975, the Mitchells' family started their day unaware that a tragedy awaits them by the end of the day. Laurel, Sarah, and a friend of Laurel who stays with them woke up to tackle their morning chores. Bruce, the oldest child and the only son, was not around at the time because he was already married and was serving in the Army in California. Dick and Wilmer got ready for work and bade their daughters goodbye as they headed out to their respective workplace. Later that afternoon, Laurel, who was on a night shift, also headed to work with plans of meeting up with her friends at Adventureland when her shift was over. Oftentimes when she works the night shift, either her mom or dad would pick her up after work. But on the 6th of August, 1975, since she had plans to meet up with her friends, she didn't see the need for her parents to come pick her up. Around 10 p.m., Laurel Mitchell began to wrap up her work for the day, and at exactly 10:15 p.m., she left her workplace and headed out to Adventureland, a once popular amusement park about half a mile away from the restaurant where she worked. On her way there, she passed by a classmate who waved at her as she walked by the entrance to the Epworth Forest, and that appeared to have been the last time Laurel was seen alive. She never made it to Adventureland. Neither her friends nor family knew she was missing or in danger. Her parents believed she was with her friends at Adventureland, when in reality, her friends for some reason had changed location and gone to the county fair that evening, thinking that Laurel had just gone home after work. The midnight curfew for the Mitchells family passed, and Laurel's family became worried because Laurel had not come back home. They waited through the night, checking the door to see if she would walk in, but Laurel never did. In the early hours of August 7th, 1975, at exactly 4:16 a.m., Dick and Wilma Mitchell called the police to report their daughter missing. Neighbors, friends, and the police started out for a search, but Laurel couldn't be found in all the areas they looked for her. However, few hours later, at around 10:30 a.m., a man named Glenn Dixon and his son, Hager Dixon, were about to start fishing in the Elkhart River near Diamond Lake Road Bridge in Noble County when they found a dead body floating in the water. The police were called to the crime scene, and the body was quickly identified to be Laurel Mitchell. The news of Laurel's death shattered her family and the whole community of North Webster, who saw Laurel as a kind, decent, and beautiful person. Laurel was described as smart, boisterous, and motherly, often doting on the neighborhood children. Due to her involvement in the local church choir group, dance classes, and other community events, she was a well-known face in the small town of North Webster. And this was why residents in North Webster were shocked. They wondered who could kill such a sweet girl who wouldn't hurt a fly. On the day Laurel's body was discovered, Dr. Peel Sankey from the Goshen General Hospital in Goshen, Elkhart County, Indiana, performed an autopsy on her. The cause of Laurel's death was determined to be drowning. She showed no obvious signs of trauma aside from several bruises on her hands and shoulder. She was said to have resisted her attacker, fighting for her life. When Laurel was discovered, she was fully clothed, however. The autopsy determined that she had been sexually assaulted. The police ruled the case to be homicide, and the search for Laurel's killer began. Indiana State Police, along with the Kosciuszko County Sheriff's Department, the Noble County Sheriff's Department, and the Noble County Coroner's Office opened an investigation into Mitchell's death. Investigators spent thousands of hours trying to solve her murder. They followed every lead. They interviewed neighbors who lived around the crime scene. A woman named Catherine Flynn, who lived at the area at the time of Laurel's murder, told the police that around 10 p.m. on the 6th of August, 1975, that she heard a loud car turn around next door. She said she heard voices say, "Let's get," or "Let's get her." Another resident with the name Frank Overmeyer told investigators he also heard a loud vehicle in the neighborhood, possibly an Oldsmobile. The police followed these leads and tried all they could, but the killer of Laurel could not be found. Over the next 5 decades, numerous detectives continued to work on her case. With no improved DNA technology in the 1970s, the Laurel Mitchell's case was gradually getting cold. After waiting for years to get answers, sadly, Dick and Wilmer Mitchell couldn't cheat nature as they passed away from natural causes at the age of 82 in 2012. However, despite the case growing colder by the day, Laurel's sister, Sarah Mitchell, never gave up hope of finding answers. Every year, she would appeal to the media to once again cover her sister's story and always maintain contact with Detective Kevin Smith, who was assigned to Laurel's case. During one of her chats with the detective, Sarah mentioned that a family friend had told her a small band from Delphi, Indiana called Celebrate the Sun, consisting of several boys and girls around the ages of 16 to 20, had played a show that evening at the Cokesbury Inn and had left around the same time Laurel was last seen alive. The family friend also mentioned seeing the same group at the fire station later that evening. He described seeing a woman having a panic attack and hyperventilating outside of the fire station. He said the woman was accompanied by a group of guys, all around the ages of 16 to 20, who were trying to calm her down. The detective then told Sarah that this tip had never been reported and felt it was worth investigating. Investigators then tracked down the members of the band. It was, however, discovered that they were a performing church group who were not from Delphi and had never stopped at the fire station that evening. The case went cold again, but in June 2013, a year after Laurel's parents died, Renee Sexton, a Florida woman who was 16 years old and living in Noble County in 1975, contacted the county sheriff's department to inform them that she had gone on a date with a man called John Wayne Lefman, and as he was driving her back home, he admitted his involvement in a crime that he committed with his friend Fred Bandy. John Wayne Leafman had told the woman details that were consistent with the police findings when Laurel's body was found, including the anatomical findings from the autopsy results. In 2014, Bill McDonald, who was a high school sophomore at the time of Laurel's murder, told police that he socialized with a man named Fred Bandy while in high school, and that Fred Bandy told him after Laurel Mitchell's murder that he had committed the crime and also provided details of the location where her body was found. In 2019, another man told the police that he and Bill McDonald had attended a high school party with Fred Bandy, John Wayne Leafman, and others when Mitchell's murder came up. Fred Bandy then stated that he and John Wayne Leafman committed the crime of killing Laurel Mitchell together. These multiple confessions were what the investigators needed to pursue the case vigorously once again. After the last witness came forward with the same information, in 2019, Laurel Mitchell's clothes and other evidence preserved from the crime scene in 1975 were resubmitted for DNA testing at the Indiana State Police Laboratory. The forensics developed a profile for a possible suspect. 3 suspects who were initially on the list of the investigators were eliminated and attention was shifted to Fred Bandy for a buccal swab. On December 5, 2022, authorities visited Fred Bandy at his residence, explaining to him the reason they were there, and asking for a sample of his DNA. Surprisingly, Fred Bandy did not put up a fight. He voluntarily provided the DNA sample. Fred Bandy's buccal swab was then taken to the lab for testing, and the results showed that Fred Bandy is more likely to be the contributor of the DNA found in Laurel Jane Mitchell's clothing than any other unknown person. A search warrant on Fred Bandy's home was issued, and during the search, investigators later discovered that Fred Bandy had a 1971 Oldsmobile. In 1975, it is believed that the Oldsmobile was used by him and John Wayne Leffman to bring Mitchell to the Mallard Roost public access site in Noble County, where they forcibly removed her from the vehicle and deliberately drowned her. Additionally, information from the Indiana court database shows that Fred Bandy is a twice convicted child molester, deemed a sexually violent predator in Elkhart County. On Monday, 6th of February 2023, 47 years and 6 months after her death, the Indiana State Police and the Noble County Sheriff's Department arrested Fred Bandy and John Wayne Leafman in their respective homes and charged them with the murder of Laurel Jean Mitchell. Both suspects are being held in the Noble County Jail without bond. Following the arrest of Laurel's killers, her sister, Sarah Nicely Mitchell, said, "They basically blew up my family. For a lot of years. It was rage. If I could have killed them myself, I would have. If they gave them the electric chair, I would have thrown the switch. I'm glad they are going to be punished, that they won't be able to hurt anyone else. But she's still dead." She remembered her sister and said, "She was just a good, kind, decent person. She was an awesome person. Wherever she went, she had to take me with her. That wasn't fun for her, but it was for me. She didn't deserve this. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.